Okay, we are live. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Renee Peaty. I'm from Striven, and for those of you who don't know of us, we're your one-stop shop for everything. So curated professional development content, coaching, mentoring, networking, and courses. I just want to say good morning to everyone who has joined us from this side of the world, and we might have some people joining us from the US, so good evening to you. Every month we hold a webinar tackling big themes, and habits is our topic for January. So at the start of a new year, forming and focusing on your habits seems to be a common practice for many of us, me included. Habits have a huge influence on our life. They help us to increase our energy, our happiness, and our satisfaction. And to help us to better understand how to harness our habits, we've invited Andrea Prince. Andrea is the founder and director at Clarity Coaching Lab, and she's here to share her experiences. Andrea has a talent for developing people, driving positive change, and building organisations that are aligned to an innovative culture. She combines her HR experience with evidence-based coaching to encourage a more human way of doing business. Good morning, Andrea.
Good morning, Renee, and thank you to you and Laura and the team at Striven for the opportunity to come and speak to everybody about this very important topic as we move into a new year. Welcome and thanks for joining wherever you are in the world. I think we've got people from Australia, we've got people from Asia, we've got people from the US, so super exciting and top points for carving a little bit of time out in your busy week to think about how habits can give you a more productive, a more satisfying and easier 2024. So a little bit more about you. For those of you on the call who know me, this won't be new news, but for those I haven't met before, a little bit about me is up until 2015, I was working for one of the very large banks in Australia. And on paper, everything looked fine. I had a senior role supporting technology teams in the bank. But something was missing for me. So when an opportunity came up to go and work in South Africa for a fintech startup, I jumped at it. So trading the suits and the heels for jeans and T-shirts, off I went with my suitcase. And I'm telling you this story because it was an absolute pivotal point for me in my career, and it's why I'm a qualified coach and why I've established Clarity Coaching Lab. When I moved to South Africa, hadn't been there before, I realised that the bulk of the population were in poverty, and we worked a lot with young people when we were establishing the new bank. We were looking at how to bring young people into jobs, and young people with loads of potential, way smarter than me, who just had not had an opportunity. They had not had parents who had worked. They had no computer to develop a CV. They had no way of printing out information to go to a prospective employer or email it to a prospective employer. So that for me was like a light bulb moment about how can we support individuals to realise their unique and full potential. And this work and what we're going to discuss today is really what I'm passionate about. So with that, about today, some of these concepts you will no doubt have heard about, and I think the benefit of today is what you do with the information. So please reflect as we go through and think about it, what it means to you, given your day, your week, your month, your 2024. And this is important, I think, for each of us because we all have a particular goal or objective that we're striving towards, or we might want to change that we're wanting to make. We might have a vision that we're wanting to realise. If you're stuck on setting a goal or developing your own vision that gets you really excited, please send me a message. I'll give you some contact details at the end of this session. So I encourage you as we go in to think about your why and why you're wanting to make these changes and why you're wanting to develop different habits. So how are we all feeling this week? I'd like you to, if you can, drop an emoji in the chat. They don't have to be the same as these emojis, but one is really, I'm cool, calm, and collected. I've got this. Two is, I think I can get most done, but I'm actually worried about some curveballs that might come my way. Number three is, same as always, I started the week with a plan, but I just can't get everything done. Four is more towards the meltdown end where, you know, the plan for the week just got turned on its head. It's only Wednesday and I'm stressed. And hopefully not too many people are in five, but it can happen, is where you're completely overwhelmed and panicked and things are out of control. So have we got any emojis coming through?
Not yet so far, but I can definitely talk to. Oh, hang on, we've got a couple. We've got a couple of smiley faces, and we've got a number 2 and we've got a number 1 coming through, which is great.
Great.
Another number 2. I'm probably in between the number 2 and the number 3. I've just been a little bit unwell this week, so I just haven't been on top of things as I normally would be. But you know, getting there. I think we've got mainly
That's
number
great.
2. How about you this week, Andrea?
I think I am a number 2. There's a couple of things that I'm worried about could hit me unexpectedly, and carving some time out in my week so I can manage that. And I think we've all been, you know, number 4 at least. Some of us have been in number 5. So hopefully today there's some hints and tips and hacks that can help you to make it a smoother run. And encourage you to take a pen and paper and jot down any particular insights or actions that you're going to take away from today. So let's start by looking at our precious time. And I'm going to run through my top tips, and obviously a no-brainer, plan and prioritize, and particularly think about, out of everything that we have on our plate, what is the highest value piece that we need to get done in our day or our week or our month. I actually plan daily, weekly, monthly, and annually. What is going to shift the dial for the business that we're working for or for ourselves? And write it down. So a lot of this information comes from neuroscience, and neuroscience will tell us that by writing it down, we have a stronger level of commitment to that and we're more likely to action it. Not everyone will be able to delegate or outsource, but if you can, that's amazing. I've just hired a virtual assistant for my business because I felt like I was doing too much and I was doing some things that were not really high value for my clients or for my business. So the VA is helping me with some other pieces.
And can anyone sort of, you know, I kind of think a lot of business owners opt for VAs. Has it been fairly easy to integrate the VA into your business?
It hasn't been as well. I'm actually still doing it at the moment. I've just hired the person, so it's not as easy as I would have anticipated. I think initially you actually lose some productivity because you have to explain your systems and your processes and your business to the person, but they're coming up the curve very quickly. So I think initially expect to have to give more of your time and energy, but over time you'll get the benefits of that. Yeah, for sure. Yep. Time blocking. So I think back in the 1990s, I'm showing my age here, multitasking was, you know, we used to wear it like a badge of honor, and it's so not 2024. So it doesn't mean you can't get a lot of quick things done in a space of time, but it is about blocking different times in your diary for different activities, because every time we task switch, we lose productivity. So neurally, it takes our brain and it takes our energy, cognitive energy, to stop doing one task and then to move over to another task. Renee, do you have are you doing time blocking at the moment? Yeah, in your business?
So what I tend to do is at the moment, sort of, I go through stages, but at the moment I'm using the 2-minute rule. So if I think it can be completed in 2 minutes, I'll try and do it as soon as possible or immediately. If it will take longer than 2 minutes, then I schedule some time in. So I'll schedule time into my calendar to complete it. And then there's another 2-minute rule, which is if there's something that you've been putting off that's at the bottom of your to-do list and you never seem to be able to get to it, just set aside 2 minutes to make a bit of a start on it. And then you end up spending at least minimum sort of 5 to 10 minutes on it anyway, if not longer.
Right.
But that's what I use at the moment, and I find that it reduces the time because I don't have to remember to do these simple sort of, and it's mainly sort of admin-based tasks.
Yep, yep. That's a great example. I use it as well in that if I've got something difficult, it's a combination of reward and environment and time blocking, but I take myself out of my home into my lovely local coffee shop and I give myself 1 hour or 2 hours and I get it done. More often with deep work.
I think coffee shops are good if you are working from home, going somewhere where you can minimize those distractions and not have other things going on around you as well, are good. And we've just had Amy comment about time blocking. She started time blocking last year and it's really helped her.
Thanks, Amy. I wonder if that's Amy in Hong Kong. I hope so. And I think you had a story for me, Renee, about, did we talk about this already, about the Apple Watch?
No, we haven't spoken about the Apple Watch, but so I feel a bit bad saying this on a LinkedIn Live, but yeah, I was gifted an Apple Watch by my husband for Christmas, and it's just not the right sort of gift for me. I do get distracted. So I've removed all of my, Facebook, Instagram off my phone so I don't go into that little tunnel of being distracted. And to be honest, the last thing I need is a text message coming through on my watch as well as my phone as well as everything else. So I try and reduce notifications and take all of those apps off, so I'm not constantly moving from one thing to another and getting distracted by what could be a minimal thing and take me off task.
That's great. I mean, my distraction is I have to sweep the floor, and it's really not an important piece at all, but I get distracted when I see stuff on the floor that needs to be swept up. Moving on, gamifying our day. So I've got two great examples here. I know when I worked in the city, I used to get my cappuccino and then go into the office. Now I'm in the country, I've switched it around. I make sure that I do something challenging first up in the day. And then I'll go out and get a cup of coffee if I'm not working in the coffee shop. The other technique, and I don't know whether you've heard of this, is called the Pomodoro technique. And in the previous organisation I worked for, one of our top performers used this and introduced me to it. And it was amazing. So you time yourself either through a vintage not an egg timer. Yeah, it is an egg timer, or you use your phone and you put a stopwatch on. But basically, you might give yourself, for example, 20 or 25 minutes. You say, okay, I've got these. You make sure it's realistic. I've got these pieces to get done. You get them done, and then you reward yourself with a break. So that's another really cool technique.
Yeah, actually, I've heard of a lot of people doing that and having a lot of success out of it. So rather than kind of going, I've got all of these tasks, all you do is committing, is it 20 or 25 minutes to it?
Yeah,
and then
whatever works. Yeah,
taking a break. Yeah,
absolutely. This one's an oldie but a goodie, but efficient meetings, most of us know this, but I think particularly in corporate, we invite lots of people to the meetings because we don't want them to feel like they're left out. But honestly, a short meeting's a good meeting. Be very mindful about whose time and energy you're using by asking people to come into a meeting, and make sure you've got a really focused agenda. If there are managers in the...
Sorry. We had a comment come in about the Pomodoro technique. Someone just said they've tried, but always find that they're stuck at their desk, so they're not able to take that break. There just must be an influx of tasks to complete.
That's really hard. I mean, I don't know what job you're in, but the ability to carve out some time is very difficult. But I guess if you're in for example, a service role where you're hit with a lot of customer demands on an ongoing basis, then that might be difficult. But the ideal is, if you can manage it, is to try and carve some time out in your day or your week to give yourself space, because if you're constantly reacting, it's quite challenging.
Yeah, you need that break as a reward, I think.
Yeah, for sure. If we've got any managers in the room who are leading teams, just also be mindful about how if you're changing your schedule, it will create some whiplash for your team in terms of they then need to replan and reprioritize. So I'm not saying never change your schedule, because I know that's not realistic, but just be mindful of what the impact is to your people if you do that. And finally, be aware of how many times you interrupt others, whether that be people you're sitting next to at work, or, you know, Renee and I think we were talking before, I think we had a pretty good cadence leading up to this. We weren't peppering each other with lots of emails and messages until yesterday. Then obviously it gets a little busier as you get closer to the event.
Yeah, we just scheduled in, I think, 2 different chunks of doing some technical run-throughs, and then some guidance documents in terms of how the webinar would run and flow. So yeah, so you've been great to work with, actually.
You too. So we've got 100% of time. We don't have 110%, 120%, 150%. So how do we carve up this pie? And many of you would have seen this before. It's called the Urgency Importance Matrix, also known as the Eisenhower Matrix. Apparently Eisenhower developed this. And you can see on the y-axis there's importance, and on the x-axis there's urgency. And what we tend to do as humans is, if we do things that are, I guess, easier to do and less important, often they will fall into the low importance, quick, easy task. We get a little dose of dopamine in our brains. You know that really good feeling you get when you tick off your to-do list? That's it. Sometimes, not always, I'm making some generalizations here. Sometimes the high value pieces might require some more thinking or some more energy or some more time. And that's where my sweeping the floor comes in. You know, if I've got the assignment to do, I might sweep the floor instead of doing the assignment. So just be aware of that. I mean, this matrix is really saying, if it's really important and really urgent, do it now. That's that top right-hand box. If it's really important but you don't need to do it now, make a plan, schedule it. And if it's not important and not urgent, delegate it. Now, I do say that with the caveat that I know not everyone's in the situation where they can do that. And then you've got your lower priority options, which you can just push to later. So I hope that this is a valuable framework for you. We will be providing these resources to you after the call as well.
I love the dopamine hit so much that sometimes on my to-do list, I put things that I've already completed just so I can write them down and then put across through them.
I'm guilty of that. I'm guilty of that. I've been doing the to-do list for many years now, and it is a great feeling. We could go into a whole bunch of detail about that. We could have color codes for, you know, these 4 categories and all sorts of things. I do have a today list, an urgent and a non-urgent list, as I'm sure many people do on the call. So having spent some time looking at time, let's look at our energy. And I'm going to go through some top tips here. And the research will tell us that the time of the day when we're most productive varies between people. So question for you, Renee, when are you most productive?
I'm a morning person, but I just find that I used to be able to get up at ridiculous hours in the morning. If I had something on that day, I could get up easily at 5 or 5:30
Wow.
if I needed to work on it. And that has definitely changed as I've gotten older. So, and I do find sometimes I'm sitting in front of the TV with my laptop working into the night if I need to as well. So it has sort of changed over time. Generally, the brain functions better in the morning. And I'll probably leave the more admin sort of tasks to the evening. How about you?
Got it. I'm in the morning as well. And then I have a burst sort of like late in the afternoon, probably 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. is another really good time for me. But the guidance here is that, you know, in terms of our energy, that's when we're most pick the time of the day when we're most productive, and that's where we, you know, ideally should be doing the things that are more challenging or high value. When we're a little bit less energetic, pick the things that are really easy. So for me, if I'm having that 3 p.m. slump, I'll go and pay my bills, because I know that's a really easy piece to do.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of debate recently about motivation versus our environment. And I'm going to start by talking about motivation. And there's a couple of pieces to this. One is having a compelling vision. So that could be, for example, am I really excited about the company's business model and vision if I'm working for a company, or have I got my own personal or professional vision or goal that I'm working towards? Because, you know, life's too short not to be excited about what we're doing. So that would be the first thing I would say. The caveat on that is we're not always going to be motivated, and that's where we're going to get to environment. So we might work for an amazing business. We're really excited about their vision and their business model, but given the macro environment, it might be a tough time, right? So our motivation might dip a little bit. It doesn't mean that we're not excited overall, but our motivation can dip. The other really great thing that can help with motivation is leveraging your natural strengths. And if anyone wants any more information about how to unpack your own natural strengths and preferences, just send me a note and I can help you with that. But this theory is that we all naturally we're born with a natural strength or preference for different types of work. And that if we can leverage those, not 100%, because I don't think there's any job that is ever going to let me leverage my natural strengths and preferences. But if we can have an emphasis on those, that we're going to achieve excellence more easily, we're going to have more satisfaction and more motivation and more joy in our work. So that's another piece to think about if you're thinking about your motivation. Don't know whether anyone's got any comments on that.
I think it's just that whole thing. If you're doing something that you're good at, then you enjoy it more. You have more self-confidence. You know, you feel like you're really contributing. People have just sort of said really good points in the comments section.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
I mean, the example for me is my Excel is not my strength. The analytical piece is just my strength. So I do have to work on Excel. And when I do, my energy just drops, right? I've got to make sure I've got a big cappuccino to tackle that. So it's observing yourself and observing what is working for your energy and what is not. Having said that, we can really do things in our environment that are going to help us to manage our energy as well. So even if we're not feeling motivated, there are hacks that we can use. So you've heard about mine, about taking myself out to the coffee shop and doing the hard thing with a nice cappuccino beside me. If you're working in an office, there's a lot of research to say why working in an open plan can be really good for engagement and productivity. But there's also a flip side that if you're wanting to do deep work, there's some research that suggests that going into a room on your own where you're not going to be interrupted and distracted can be very useful, depending on the task. You can think about lighting in the office. You can think about the technology and tools that you've got available to you. And my big tip, particularly as we're partnering today with Renee from Strivin, and it is about career development, is if you're in an environment that does not support your contribution, think about whether it's the right environment for you. And I'm not telling everyone to leave their jobs, but it is very important for our energy to feel like that what we're doing is valued and supported.
Amy's just said that local libraries are a great place for stimulating focus.
Oh, yeah. Yes, and Amy, I use the library as well. Yes.
Libraries are great. I'm a big lover of libraries in that it's really one of the only places where you can go where there's no expectation that you should be spending money. That's part of my love of libraries. I also think in terms of a lot of us are working in a hybrid way. You know, we're working part home, part work, and we can almost schedule our weeks according to where we will be and the types of work that we can undertake in different environments, which is helpful as well.
That's a great point. So we've got more flexibility. Hopefully we've all got more flexibility now than we did 5 years ago on where we work and how. I know that's not the case for everybody, but I'll declare my hand. I think that the mandate to have people back into the office is going to be very vintage very quickly. I think, you know, as a HR professional, I do think we're going to lose out on talent by not giving people the flexibility to work when and how they want, for all these reasons that we're discussing today. What else did I have here? Headspace for deep work. We've talked about this a number of times this morning, but do give yourself permission and space if you've got to dive into something that's going to be, quite a lot of thinking power. And your well-being, and we've all heard about this, but just to underline it, we're not machines. 1980s, 1990s, I'm showing my age, we would pull an all-nighter or work the 16-hour day. That's very vintage. We know now that if we don't look after our sleep, our nutrition, our movement, and our social and other needs, that we're not going to perform as effectively. So it's not even a nice to have now, it's a must have. We need to look after ourselves. We wouldn't have, to take an extreme example, an Olympic athlete preparing for a competition and them not looking after their body and their mind. So just to kind of really encourage everyone on that point.
Andrea, we've had a couple of comments come in. Deepak has said that he seconds Amy's comment about local libraries. They're great spaces to find somewhere to focus and be less distracted. And Timothy Davidson has a question. He has disclosed that he is a long-time fan of yours. So with your global experience working across multiple time zones, how do you balance the moments when you may need to work during some of your least energetic times? That's a great question.
So thank you, Deepak, and thank you, Timothy. Hello to you over in Boston. Timothy, this would be because we were on calls when Timothy was awake in the morning and it was midnight my time. That's why he's asking that question. And I think, look, if you are working in a global business with different time zones, it's another level. So Timothy, what you may or may not know is that I used to have a sleep in the next day. I used to block out my calendar and just say not available. And it might be 9 or 10 a.m. before I awoke. And I would also tell the team that I was leading that I'm not going to be available because I knew that I couldn't physically keep going, especially during the pandemic with lots of late night calls. I don't know whether other people experienced that, but it was a bit hectic. But thank you, and nice to hear from you, Timothy.
So what do we do if we're implementing different strategies, but we feel that habits aren't sticking or it's still not working?
Thank you for that question, Renee. Great question. I've got one of my favourite models to show you, and many of you will know this. This is called the iceberg model, and this is a picture of an iceberg, and the things above the waterline are things that others can see in us. So things that we say, do, our behaviours, the results that we achieve, they're observable. Underneath the waterline are things that are not observable to others and may not even be conscious to ourselves. So things like our mindset, the way we think, our values, our beliefs, our past history, for example, that might influence how we feel. And sometimes things below the waterline can mean that we get stuck as humans. And I think if this happens, it's really useful to consider that and actually to consider it with someone else, because talking this through can just bring a fresh perspective and can also challenge some of our assumptions. So that could be talking it through with, if you've got someone that you work with or that you know, that you trust and you value their opinion, you could talk to them. If you work for an employer who's got an employee assistance program, I would highly recommend that, or a counsellor, or of course a coach. We're quite good at diving below the waterline and unpacking what might be resulting in you feeling really stuck. A lot of the clients that I work with know it all. I know I should be doing this, and I know these are the behavioural changes I need to make, but are having trouble getting traction on that. So encourage you to, if you are feeling a little stuck, to think about that and the ways that you can reach out for help with that.
All right, great. So we're going to go to Q&A. If you do have any questions about habits and, what's working for you, any comments, what's working for you, what's not working for you, just pop them in the chat. That would be fantastic. I've got a couple of pre-prepared questions that we can kick off with. Can you tell us a little bit maybe about the science behind how habits are formed, Andrea?
Yes, I can. So there's a concept called neuroplasticity, which is how our brain can physically change and morph. And the idea is that if we're developing habits through consistent and repeatable actions, they can actually change the neural pathways in our brain, and make it, I guess, more automatic, so that when we're wanting to make a change in behaviour, those behaviours become more automatic. So an example is most of us brush our teeth right before we go to bed. That's a great example of something that we've done consistently over a long period of time, and it's now an automatic thing. We don't really have to think about that. There's a lot I can talk about. Big fan of the book by James Clear called Atomic Habits. And if you want me to dive a little bit into that now, I can, if you like, Renee.
I'm a big fan of Atomic Habits. So yeah, happy, if you'd like to talk a little bit about some of the key learnings from that book.
Yep. And he's an ex-athlete and now performance coach. The book is actually a very heavy read, so I'm going to try and summarize the headlines for you. But also, if you are looking at it and you do enjoy a good audio book, I'd suggest you go the audio route. But he starts with the importance of setting realistic goals, and most importantly, breaking those goals down into micro steps. So he's all about consistency, taking small steps over time to get to the larger goal. And he reinforces a concept around patience. So I know for me, I'll go to the gym for 1 week and lift some weights, and then I'll think, well, why hasn't my body transformed? So remembering to practice my patience, right? I need to be there for 6 months or a year, and doing the consistent actions and the small steps, and rewarding ourselves with that. He has a technique, and I'm just going to look at my cheat sheet here, about, this is the biggest takeaway I think from his book, is how to make a habit obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying. So I'll give you the example of the gym for me. To make it obvious is the night before, getting my gym clothes out close to the end of my bed. So in the morning, I don't have to faff around thinking I'm not motivated to go to the gym. I don't know where my gym clothes are. I'll sort it. I'm not going to go. So again, he's very big on environment versus motivation. So making it obvious, having them by the end of the bed. Doing some physical activity that is attractive. So the second piece is attractiveness. You will never get me running or doing extreme cardio. It's not something I enjoy, but I do enjoy lifting weights. So the attraction for me is choosing something that I really enjoy, lifting weights. Making it simple and easy. I have a personal trainer, and to make it easy, we go set by set, rep by rep. And if it wasn't for making it that simple and easy, I don't know whether I'd actually get it done. And making it satisfying. So I always couple my gym session with my favourite cafe in town, because I'm in the country, so I have to drive in to get to the gym. And it's a cafe that has really delicious and nutritious food. And that's almost like a reward, and helps me to create like a satisfying experience for my workout. One more piece from James Clear, sorry, Renee, is that it's really important sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say that makes it a really nice experience afterwards.
It does, which brings me to this point about layering. And layering is, if you have something already in your routine, can you add it into that? So because I live in the country, there's no shops where I live. I have to drive into town a couple of times a week, which I like because it's away from the screen time. I'm on the screen a lot. So layering for me is, I already go to town, so let's layer it into an existing routine and structure that I have in my week. So remember, obvious, attractive, easy, satisfying, and then that activity of layering. Yeah, that's
a great
the most I took out of Atomic Habits, but I'd highly recommend the book.
That's fantastic. We've got a question from Amy. What are some mistakes to avoid when forming new habits?
Great. I think the all or nothing, and we've heard this before, but, okay, I've been to the gym for a week, my body hasn't transformed, so it's nothing. I'm not going to go anymore. I'm not going to stick with it. So, and I think, you know, there is that really important advice that every day is a new day. So don't beat yourself up or be negative if things have interrupted your plan or your new habits. Every day is a new opportunity to reset. So I think probably the biggest thing is the all or nothing, and the impatience is probably something that I think can really slow us down from getting the habits to be really sticky.
Great. Well, if there aren't any other questions that have come through, and there haven't, maybe we could go to, I think you've got some resources that you recommend on this topic.
I do. There is in the resource page this slide, which you know, I guess summarises a lot of what we've just talked about this morning. There is one point I want to talk about before we go to resources, which is about our nervous system. So there's a lot of information around at the moment which says, okay, I've got all these productivity hacks, I've got my big dream goal, but the nervous system can play a really important point in us crashing through that. So everyone, I think, on the call has probably heard about the fight, flight, or freeze response when we're trying to avoid pain. And, you know, I think for animals in the wild, it serves them really well. So if a gazelle's being chased by a lion, it's going to flee, it's going to freeze, or it's going to fight. Now that we're in our modern world, when we experience a threat or a potential pain, we can have those different responses in our body. We can fight, we can freeze, or we can flee. And flee often looks like avoiding the task. The research is really telling us at the moment that if we can fight, and it doesn't mean aggressive behaviour or anything like that, I'll explain. But if we can fight and move through it, sorry?
Yeah. I was just going to say, so fight in the sense of just keeping on, you know, keeping on task, not abandoning it, pushing through.
Yes. And pushing through those things that may take more time and energy. So, for example, it's really hot where I live in Australia, and every day at the end of the day, I'm attempting to do my 5K walk down to the lake and back. Now, because it's really hot, of course I want to stay in the air conditioning and I want to flee that thing, right? I don't really want to get out in the hot weather and walk. But my goodness, do I feel amazing when I do it and I come back. Because if I don't do it, I feel stressed. And when I do it, I get a big dose of dopamine. And I get to experience that really great feeling and generally less stressed. There's another book that talks about this really eloquently, and it's a book that I will reference at the end here, and it's called Burnout. But it's really about, again, using the body and moving the body can really take us through the fight stage, which will give us the dopamine hit. And even like, this is my first LinkedIn Live, so I'm waiting, you know, maybe in about 30 minutes, I'm going to experience a nice dose of dopamine after giving this presentation.
You've done a great job for your LinkedIn Live.
Oh, thank you, Renee. We get a lot of dopamine hits really quickly now. I think you were talking, Renee, about your kids and gaming, but you know, for me, it's Netflix or it's social media. It's not so much in the country, but when I was in the city, you know, ordering in the food rather than cooking the food. And that's to do with the pleasure center of our brain. And we can really overdo it. And if we're getting a lot of quick hits of dopamine, we actually need more and more dopamine to give us that good feeling. And there's a lot of research. If you read a book, and I have it listed at the end, called The Dopamine Nation, it's amazing because it talks about addiction. I picked it up and I was like, I don't think I have any addictions. And then I thought, actually, I think I do. I'm addicted to my Instagram, and I could be addicted to Netflix. And it is really wanting that dopamine rush. Whereas if we delay gratification and do the hard thing, then we will still get dopamine, but it will be in a more sustainable form.
Yeah, that's a great. I think that's something. I think we all have that kind of dopamine hit, and we're all addicted to different things. You know, coffees, for me, it is a lot of those streaming services like Netflix and things like that. And it's also habitual, and I'll do that at the end of the day. And then, my kids in terms of video games and things like that. High functioning addicts is how I refer to them. And I just written a comment saying, great points. I'll certainly apply the fight method to push through my impatience.
Yeah, I love it. Yep, the impatience, we want it all now, and it's a great way of explaining it. The other way we can activate what's called our parasympathetic nervous system, which can combat our stress response, is through breathing. So if you want to look up box breathing, if we had a bit more time, we could do it now on the call, but it's basically in for 4, hold for 6, out for 5, hold for 4. And that there's a lot of science around it, but it's, for those who participate in yoga or meditation, it's part of that as well. But that's a really good hack for if you're feeling overstimulated or quite stressed about something. And then the other thing, of course, is sleep and rest. Will really activate the parasympathetic nervous system. So take a minute to just go ahead.
Sorry. Is this for people to just think through their top takeaways?
Yeah, it could be an action. Yeah, and sometimes it can be an insight that can then lead to an action. It can be like, oh my goodness, I just realized I'm doing that, or I'm not doing that, or if I did this, it would make a significant difference to my life. Because I think it's this small. Everything we're reading it's the small incremental changes. It's the 1% that you described to me, Renee, that can really help us shift the dial.
That's what my focus is for this year, those sort of 1%ers, and just modifying different parts of my, I suppose my lifestyle, my day. What's the 1% that will make a small difference? And then, that's another thing that I took away from James Clear's book as well. Adding all that up to what that looks like at the end of the week or the month.
Yep. And we often wait for someone to save us, but no one's going to save us. It's down to us, unfortunately or fortunately. So I think, taking a moment to reflect on what it's going to mean to all of your life, even if it's a work-related situation, what does that then mean to, how you can feel when you're spending time with your family? What's it going to mean in terms of giving yourself permission to be healthy or to, do the leisure activities?
Tim Davidson has just written down his top takeaways from the session, and they are prioritize, Pomodoro, and spend time with the qualities that make atomic habits.
Thank you, Timothy. I look forward to hearing about the Pomodoro technique, given I know you've got a very large job over there. Thank you so much for those. Anyone else have any that they would like to share?
No, but Tim has written another one. So listen to leaders like Andrew who value these dimensions of work and life.
Thank you. So appreciated. So here's a few more resources. The books that I've talked about this morning are Atomic Habits by James Clear. We've got Dopamine Nation. The first chapter is quite confronting, but get through that and it gets a little easier. And then this book about burnout, it covers a lot of ground, but the thing that they spoke so eloquently about, if you don't want to buy the book, you could probably ChatGPT it or Google it, in terms of they talk about the fight, flight and flee response, and they talk about the importance of getting it out of the body, whether it be the walk, getting the task done. I think they do recommend actually that even if it's a hard task like getting an assignment done, that they still recommend getting it out of the body. And I'm thinking, now I understand why there's so many strong recommendations about moving our body, whether it be a walk or whether it be lifting weights or running or doing a yoga class, because there's something about physically getting that response out of your body that dates back to way back when, when we weren't living this modern life. And remember, every day is a new day and a chance to reset. I'm absolutely confident and passionate in our ability to adapt as humans and change. It's not always easy, particularly when you've got a lot of different pressures hitting you all at once. But I encourage you and wish you well in your endeavours to change even the smallest change in your day or your week or your month.
Fantastic. So
we might just,
you kick off. You go.
yeah, let's just throw one word in the chat, please, if you can, just to let me know let Renee and I know how you found the session. That would be super helpful. And then, as a coach, I think that people really do achieve their best when they're supported to realise their full potential, and that can it always involves staring into things that interfere with that potential, whether it be things that are created by ourselves, our own mindset, or whether they be things that are created by, oh, the market's too hard at the moment, or I don't have the right technology to get this done, or my manager's not supporting me to do it. So I encourage you to really aim big. We've all got loads more potential in us than we typically realise. And if you would like any more other information, here is my LinkedIn contact details. And you can find me at my www.claritycoachinglab.com. But really happy to take any other, we've got some time, so any other conversations, questions, chats that you'd like.
That's great. We've had some comments come in. They're the one-word takeaways. So we've had brilliant and re-energizing. And yeah, I definitely feel that there's a lot of value in those slides as well. And we can, we definitely send those out to people that came along today as well. But I think it's a useful resource where you kind of go, all right, so this isn't quite, nothing's quite working for me, and even going back to that matrix about, how I should carve it up, do I, can I delegate it? Do I prioritize it? How's that going to, how am I going to achieve that task? So I've taken a lot out today.
Great. And keep experimenting. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Renee.
Sorry. We've had one more question come in from Amy, and that's, if we were to cherry pick the small habits that pack the biggest punch, what would you recommend?
I think this is going to sound like I'm answering a question with a question, but it does really depend on your context and what you're going after. So, for example, the habits are going to be very specific and meaningful to you. I think it really comes back down to designing the structure and the environment that's going to support your habits, rather than doing everything we've done to date. How can we do things differently? And you think back to, I'm going to rely on James again, because I do think this is super valuable. But, how can we make it obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying? And to be almost designing this, like, if we don't design our lives and how we're going to use our time, other people will take it from us, and it will just happen to us. So we all deserve a life that we're super excited about. And I know everything's not always roses, I get it, and we're under so much pressure today with a lot of things hitting us. But I do think if we can intentionally use those strategies of James's to design our day, and think about it the night before. I mean, on a Sunday afternoon, I know pretty much what I'm doing during the week, apart from knowing that I'm going to be hit with unexpected things. But really take ownership, be intentional, and go after what you're really excited about.
Fantastic. All right. Well, I think we might wrap up there. Thank you so much, Andrea, for this session.
Yeah.
It's been fantastic and given us a lot to think about in terms of, new habits that we need to form or habits that aren't quite sticking. So we will be sending out all the resources or Andrea's slide pack to people that came along today and people that registered. And check the Striving website for other events and LinkedIn page for other events that we have coming up. So thanks very much again, Andrew, and thank you everyone for attending and for all your great comments and questions as well.
Thanks, Renee. Thanks, Striving. Thanks, everyone, for attending.
Thank you.